Legs' first NBA Finals is one for the record books, one we're going to remember for a long time. But what will we remember about it? What are we going to take away from this season? Where do the Spurs have to go from here? And we're also going to name our all-playoff team and talk about the best series. We're looking back at this playoff run on the All-NBA Show. What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllCity. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, I didn't realize until we went live on this show that I'm losing my voice. I'm really just now as I did the intro, because I've been coaching all weekend. And you know how it is in a crowded gym. You're just constantly screaming and hollering. I didn't realize it till 10 seconds ago.
Oh, I know. I remember that feeling. Not only coaching, but the week of my camp, man, my basketball camp, by Wednesday, it's shot. Actually, as you can tell, my voice is a little strained right now, too. Probably talked about as much as I've talked in any 3-week span over the last 3 weeks. So we'll get through it, man. We'll hold each other's hand through this as we had these raspy voices breaking down the biggest game of the season.
It's so true, man. It's so funny because I guess I've only been talking at like close range volume until just now. And here I am. I'm like, oh my God, I'm cracking. But great show, man. Excited because what a finals, what a playoff run we just had. And what a finals you got to call. I mean, we haven't yet talked, because the game happened on Saturday night, we haven't talked about Game 5 and all of the drama surrounding it. But I want to get your thoughts on it, because before we talk about the Knicks winning it and what it means and all those things, I'm just curious about Game 5 and Jalen Brunson's performance up close. You know, he was great, I thought, the entire playoff run, but that game felt like such a fitting way for it to end for the Knicks, with him carrying him over the line.
I mean, it's one of the greatest finals performances of all time. There's no other way to describe it. And it capped off this incredible run that he's had with the Knicks since the day he got there, an incredible postseason run this year. Fitting that he would be the guy to play that well in that game, in that moment, because he's the one guy that always seems unfazed by the situation. And when you look at it on a night when, you know, OG Anunoby didn't give him a whole lot offensively, just 3 for 11 points. Mikal Bridges, 14, had a solid game. Karl Anthony Towns had just 2 points in the game. You know, where are you going to make up that level of offense on the road in a closeout game? So, you know, if Brunson has a great game and goes for 36, 38, it's probably not enough. He needed all of it. And he gave them whatever was going to be necessary in the moment. 45, you never could predict it. 50%, over 50% shooting in a game like that, with that level of defensive attention on you, with that caliber defense and defenders in front of you, it's one of the greatest performances I've ever seen. And, you know, you could tell that they weren't taking anything for granted about having another home game, Game 6 or whatever it may be. They wanted to get it over with. And every moment in this series, when they had an opportunity with the game on the line, they made the plays that the Spurs struggled with. It's really that simple when you break down how the Knicks were able to do this.
So I always wonder, you know, at the end of a series, and this series was close, even this game was close, 94-90 came down to the wire, but Brunson did struggle for large portions of it and then obviously went off. Do you get the sense that he solved something or figured something out about that Spurs defense, or was this was the game he had to go off and he made tough shots?
Well, I was surprised at the decision by the Spurs repeatedly in this game, and even actually as the series wore on. They were less determined to take the ball and force the ball out of his hands. And I thought some of the early blitzing and things they did to him earlier in the series, I think it was having an effect on him. As far as rhythm, the number of guys they're running at him in general as the initial defender up the floor, it was wearing on him. Even for a guy that's this strong and well balanced, and he's not really a guy that's good. It seems like he'd be prone to fatigue. I do think it has an attrition and effect on you over a period of time. They decided to play him more straight up. I talked about it on the broadcast. They were doing a lot more just switching, handing him off to one guy. I felt like the Spurs in this series got conservative when they got leads with their approach to Jalen Brunson, meaning, you get up 10, 12, 15, obviously game 4, you go up 29. I think the general thinking is, well, The best way to erase a deficit is through three-point shooting. The best way to get three-point shots is to put 2 on the ball. We're going to give up three-point shots if we do that. So let's take a chance with this stable of defenders that we have and the number of guys we could throw at him that we feel like could do more than an adequate job. And then we've always got Wemby behind to protect, and let's take our chances with that. And I thought they did it too much in Game 5. And Jalen Brunson, once he realized that they were not bringing another guy to him, he can be more patient and a little bit more methodical in how he wants to attack you offensively and get to his spots. And he got very, very comfortable in the second half of that game. And to me, you had to see no one else on the floor was in rhythm for the Knicks and force anybody else to go make some shots and go make plays. And they really didn't get there in the second half. And Jet, so to your point about did Jalen Brunson figure something out? That's one thing he figured out. I'm going to see one guy, except for when I get to the rim. Right. So I'm gonna do most of my work either early transition stuff when I can get to the basket or the mid-range and deeper shots, and I will see one defender, and I can get space enough. And he's comfortable. He's not feeling anything in that left elbow when he lets it go. He's not prone to the pressure that guys feel. So for me, that was the one thing he saw and he figured out, and he realized they're not coming to 2. It's my responsibility to get a shot for myself. And that's kind of how that played out in the second half.
One of the stories of this playoffs and every playoffs is how well players can adapt. What is needed from me today? Do I have to be off ball? Do I have to be on ball? Do I have to shoot from outside? Do I have to get to the paint? And I think, there's a lot of players that can do a lot of different things. But this playoffs, to me, Jalen Brunson was the one that successfully did the most things. And that's kind of the story of how the Knicks won, was their ability to adjust to the circumstance. But to adjust to the circumstance requires players who are capable and willing of doing that. And I think for me, that's what's so impressive about Jalen Brunson. Coming into this year, my perspective on him was that he was something of a rigid scorer, a rigid superstar. He's great, but you kind of have to play the way he plays if he's on your team. And I think that among all the things that he shattered, that's maybe the biggest one. As I think of him now as a guy who is willing and capable of adapting himself to whatever defense you throw. And that completely changes the way you think about him and elevates how you think of him, because that's what was required to win.
He's also the rare player that is obviously high shot volume guy from the point guard position. Like that sometimes can lend itself to not necessarily having team chemistry, having guys buy in. He's the smallest starter. He's your point guard, and yet he's the guy that's going to take, on a slow night, 20 shots, some nights north of 30 shots. A lot of it off the dribble. Very little of it is off the catch and shoot. So it's all kind of methodical the way he works you, and yet not have anybody on his team want it any other way. And that's very rare. And I think it's because they have so much trust in him and belief in his ability to operate in those areas of the game when it gets a little bit dicey, man. It gets a little bit harder to navigate because of the circumstances and the repercussions. They're comfortable with it because they know they've got a guy that's just playing in a different mindset in those moments than everybody else on the floor. So they're completely entrusting of him and whatever decisions he makes. And if he wants to take 5 shots in a row, take 5 shots in a row. They're still going to be there to support him, play just as hard, defend, give it to him for the 6th shot if that's what it takes. And you don't see that very often. Sometimes that can be something that's hard for guys to get galvanized around. But they found it with this guy, this player, this team. They're an incredibly close group. And I just think when you have a guy that's that sure of the result, your teammates are going to get on board because these are high-stakes situations. And you've got a guy that's operating like that, you're going to go ahead and let him roll with it and support him any way you can.
I was thinking about this. I love the way you put it, because what word would I most use to describe Brunson? And I think determined is the word. And there's a lot of words you could throw to him. I think he's a great leader. I think he's got courage. He plays with courage. He plays with toughness, that belief that you were talking about. But I think the thing that stood out to me throughout this whole playoff run was he has a determination of spirit to him that I think is very easy to rally behind. And that's why it was great that they closed this game out where you needed 45 points. You don't score 45 points without determination. And it's like closeout game, got to get it done. The Knicks, to me, were a team that was determined. And I think Jalen Brunson is the guy who is determined, and it's so easy for the rest of the team to take on that personality. What do you think? Is determined the right word? What word would you use to describe him?
Yeah, determined is definitely a great word to describe him. I think when they asked him to sum it up, he said the word belief. And I think that goes all the way back to who he was when he's being recruited, even. And the fact that a lot of people didn't put his ceiling anywhere close to this when he came into the league. You looked at him as a guy that's certainly going to have a career, didn't know what level team he would be a starter on. Would he ever be on a contender? And if he was, would he be a starter or a backup combo guard? Like, no one knew any of those things. And he came to New York, and this is a team and franchise in a market with a lot of scrutiny, a lot of expectations, a lot of pressure. And from the very beginning, it was obvious that he was built for all of that stuff. And so the belief in himself, his teammates' belief in him, his head coach's belief in him, to me, that's probably the first word I would use with him. It's not even belief, man. He's got a self-assuredness and a certainty of the outcome. That's very rare to ever find in an NBA player.
You wouldn't say cockiness. It's just it is belief. It's all positive, I would say. The other thing about him, and I'm curious what you think of this, he's won at all levels. And I'm a huge believer in that. Like, I'm not saying if you don't win at all levels, you're a loser. But when a guy has won in college, won in high school, won in international competition, and then wins in the NBA, it's just, there's no coincidences that great. The guy has something that is so essential to sports and to competition. And so for me, I look at that pedigree and I say, you have to consider that when you talk about Jalen Brunson and how great he is historically, but also amongst his current peers, how many of them have won as much as he has won at every single level?
There's no doubt that is something that should be considered. And I think I've told you the story when I went back and watched him at practice at Villanova, and he's running practice for 30 minutes before the coaches get in there. For a freshman, like, you're just like, this is different. The guy's cut out of a different mold. He's had this leadership quality in him forever. He's had the ball in his hip. It's been his team. He's the guy that's directed, led, had the most responsibility in the court of every team he played on, all that, and won. That should matter. We should take that probably a little bit more into account, particularly at that position. And so, it came to fruition as you watch the play. I'm watching him, and I was just described him this way after the game. He's the most improbable, unstoppable scorer I've ever seen. Right? Because it's clearly that there is no answer. If this team didn't have an answer, with all of the guys they have on the perimeter that can guard at an elite level, Victor Wembanyama is the unanimous defensive player of the year behind that shell, protecting the lane, protecting the rim, and they couldn't stop him, particularly in a must-win situation when there was no one else really doing anything offensively. He's unstoppable, and it is improbable because it's not vertical. It's not anything where his speed is something that can't be contained. It's just his balance, his strength, his belief, his touch, his IQ, all of those things. And I think more than anything, what I saw in this series and throughout the time he's been in New York and this postseason run, he has an incredible ability to keep you off balance.
Yeah,
that's really what he does better than anybody else in the league. Shea's pretty good at it too. I think Brunson's the best in the league at that, keeping you off balance with his ability to just pick a direction, go, start, stop, lean in, push back, just enough strength that he can nudge you back with his shoulder to create just enough separation because he's only 6'1", 6'2". Like, he needs clearance. And he doesn't even get that much clearance a lot of times. And he still makes these shots because the trajectory and the arc always look the same. But I think it's his ability to not let you ever lock into him because you're up. You're on the balls of your feet because you feel like you've got him. It's the opposite. You're reacting. The entire time you're guarding him, you're reacting to what he's doing. You're not dictating anything to him. And that, to me, is what really stood out in his postseason run and what stood out on Saturday.
So let's talk about takeaways then from the season and really from the Knicks run. I think what this means, what does it mean that the Knicks won the championship this year? I think, one, basketball is a beautiful sport. I said this on the show yesterday. It's just the best because you look at the champions over the last 5 years, they're all different. They're all completely different. And that's what makes it great is I think this year kind of solidifies even more the idea that there isn't a blueprint to winning basketball games. There are traits, there are different ways you can do it, but the Knicks doing it this way is inspiring because it's a completely different mold. So that's my first takeaway, is that this should give other teams some excitement about, we don't have to copy everyone else. We have to figure out what we're good at, and we have to become the best version of that. That's one of my takeaways from this year. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There's no doubt about it. And I think for me, I look at this team and there was a path there this year. And I felt like, and I said this about them repeatedly, if not this year, when the hell are they going to break through? Because it's not like you look at the Eastern Conference and go, it's going to get easier or stay as easy as it was this year. And that path is that clear because of what Boston was dealing with, the changes and Tatum being out, because Halliburton wasn't in the mix. Detroit doesn't have enough shooting yet to go around Cade. The Cavs, as we know, are a little bit fragile in those moments. The Sixers were banged up all year. So you look at the rest of the East and you go, look at the Knicks. They're intact. They've got, you look up and down, that's starting lineup has everything you want. The bench, you didn't know if it was deep enough. Mike Brown's first year, so there were some question marks. But when you looked at the personnel and you looked at the team and a clear defined leader, enough around him, and the path laid out, you had to seize advantage of this opportunity this season. And that's exactly what they did. And what they did, Adam, also, the rare thing in sports was to come together and play your best basketball in the middle of the postseason, well, at the beginning of the postseason run, but in the middle of a series.
Yep.
Think about what I'm saying. Like, normally you're down 2-1. Okay, maybe you solve that series. That doesn't mean you figured this out now going forward to look the way you did. And so for them to literally play at the absolute peak level that they could for that long a period of time in the postseason, when there were some doubts about them, even in the first round of the playoffs, you just don't see that. Flip the switch, turn it around, a 180 to where now everybody has bought in that this is the team and it seems like they're destined to win it, and they were able to actually pull it off. So they took advantage of a situation that was there for them. And I'm not diminishing what they did in any way because they played incredible basketball. What I'm saying is this was a year to go get it. And they were the one team that had what it took to go do that. The question was going to be, can they handle whoever comes out of the West? Is that going to be enough for whatever, which we thought all along was going to be one of those two teams, San Antonio or Oklahoma City, ended up being the Spurs. Turns out the Knicks just continued to make the plays they had to make, even in that series that they did in the first three rounds.
Well, I think the way I would frame it is that they got connected and they peaked at the right time. And, 53 wins is a good year. It's by no means an inevitable championship year.
Right.
But it came together for them. To your point, that Hawks series, you saw the moment it came together for them because they won by 60 points. And it was like, okay, this team just really gelled. And then they just lost one game after that. So for me, that's another reason that teams around the NBA should be encouraged. The NBA season is such a slog, 82 games. I don't think the season is what it used to be where, teams have to just gun for, wins and the best team wins the most games or whatever. I think teams may look at this and say, we need to be like the Knicks. We have to figure out who we are. We need to win around 52 to 58 games, somewhere in there. But more importantly, we have to know who we are so we can come together in the playoffs. And that's exciting. And in my opinion, it should give more teams hope. It should go away from the idea of there's only one or two teams that can win it. And hey, if we become our best self at the right time, we could win it too. The variety of offense is the other thing, though, because I do think there's a lot of teams that are really good at one or two things. And then those things went away in this playoffs. They wilted on the vine. The Knicks had so many ways to reinvent themselves game by game, quarter by quarter in some cases, certainly series by series. And when you look at the variety of teams that we have in the NBA, I think you have to have offensive variety to beat defensive variety. And the Knicks, to me, represented the best case of that this year in the playoffs. They had more ways to beat you on offense than any other team.
There's no question about that. And look at their starting lineup and just go and look at their postseason runs. Brunson, we don't even need to talk about. We know what that is every night. OG Anunoby dialed it up to another level. And he's been a very good player. He certainly was a better player offensively when he got to New York than he was able to show in Toronto. He was a little bit more limited, a little bit more considered 3-and-D. They opened it up a little bit more for him in New York. He answered the bell. He was incredible. Obviously, games 3 and 4 in New York, 61 points in those 2 games. The tip in that's going to live on forever is one of the iconic moments in the history of this league. Mikal Bridges had one of the best shooting stretches for about a 10-game stretch any wing has ever had in the postseason. The guy, you're talking about 70% from the field on a pretty good volume for 10 games. Unheard of. About Brunson. You also they got just enough each game from 1 or 2 guys off the bench. It wasn't the same guys every night. Like some teams, like San Antonio, like if they weren't getting it from Dylan Harper in the postseason, they weren't getting it because they didn't. Their rotation shrunk. The depth was something we loved about them all year. The depth wasn't really a big factor for them in the postseason, except for one guy. It had to be Dylan Harper, and on those nights he wasn't getting you, 15 to 20. It was glaring. And he had a few games like that where he didn't play quite as well. For the most part, he was sensational. For the Knicks, hey, maybe one night it's Shamet. Maybe it's Alvarado who gave them a huge lift. Maybe even some nights, 10, 12 minutes, it was Mitchell Robinson who helped turn a game for a minute. Like those were the main 3 guys. Jordan Clarkson even had a couple of moments that he inserted himself into these series. McBride was like never really got going, especially the last 3 games. Did a little bit in the first 2 in San Antonio, and then really was a non-factor offensively. But it was just enough for each of those guys. But the thing was, they had more in their starting lineup than anybody else had in terms of guys who were confident, making plays, in rhythm, wanted the ball, all of that. A lot more difficult to deal with than just about every single team that we could list in the postseason.
Well, and so this is the last point on the Knicks, and then we'll turn to the Spurs. But I think Mike Brown becomes a hero of this year as well, because what a job he did coming into a team that was looking for somebody else. I mean, they tried to hire a couple other people. They end up getting him as one of their, secondary options. But their depth was the last piece for them because they are not a traditionally deep team. Oh, they got 12 guys that can all play. What they have is a great starting 5 and a bunch of specialists who can do certain things, which is great. But then you need a coach that has a finger on the pulse of each game and each series to know who do I put in that's going to give us what we need in this matchup. And I thought the Knicks had a lot of depth because they had a head coach that understood how to use that depth appropriately. And that's why you say not everybody had good games every single night, but there was one guy a night, and Mike Brown oftentimes adjusted game by game and chose the right guy to go in. So the depth and the coaching to me is the last piece of this all.
And Mike Brown, man, and I'm happy for the guy, man. I've known Mike a long time. In fact, I think it's one of his first coaching gigs, if not his first coaching gig, was in Washington when I was still in the league. And he came in mainly he was that assistant that kind of worked guys out and got on the court with you and did that kind of stuff early in his career. So I've known him a really long time. He's a great guy. And he's smart. And what he did in this series, and particularly, but even throughout the playoffs, was at the right time. I felt like he pushed a lot of the right buttons, and he didn't have a ton to push. Some guys have more buttons that are even available to him. He doesn't have as much. Like, this is their starting 5. These are the guys that are going to get this done. And then on a given night, what do I do with my bench and when? And managing, did he have to manage some foul trouble in this series? And he did it very, very well. And it was just little bursts of minutes from here, from there. And one of the things I think that because think about it, they don't win game 4 and it's 2-2. Who knows what game 5 ultimately ends up looking like? Yep. Because it felt different because the Knicks could sense it. They went for the moment up 3-1. If it's 2-2, who knows if they're playing a little tighter in game 5 if they lose that game. And one of the things that was understated in game 4, he said before the game, because of the way Brunson was being picked up full court, he's the only guy that can advance the ball against pressure, that he may have to consider playing Alvarado and Brunson together. And he hadn't really done it. They had not really played together all year except for a very limited amount of time. And that's exactly what he went to in the fourth quarter. And at that point, they'd cut it to like 15.
It's a great coach.
But it was Alvarado and Brunson. And we talked more about it at length the next day. And it was Alvarado's ability to not to just bring the ball up the floor. It was more about when he was catching the swing passes out of the traffic that Brunson was creating, his ability to catch it and take it right back into the gut of the defense for that second collapse that was going to lead to great offense. He was instrumental in the comeback in that game before OG Anunoby had the heroics late. So even something like that He felt it in his gut. He went with it, not earlier in the game either. He went with it then. Game on the line, and he pulled it off. So I felt he managed foul trouble really well. I thought, look, it's not complicated late in the game what you're going to do if you're Mike Brown. It's pretty simple. You have that guy. Spurs don't quite have that guy yet. And so for them, it was a little bit more uncertainty looking in each other's eyes. What are we doing? Who's taking over? Who's turned it? Whose ball is it? What are we running? Because Wemby is not quite there yet. And I think if he wants to get there, he has to master what I think is the most underutilized area of his game, which is 15 to 20 feet, catch, turn, face, the Dirk Nowitzki area of the floor, because right now he's more about screen rim run, screen pop back, and play from there. That area of the floor, when he learns how to operate from a jab step, to be able to get a little bit of space and rise up, or one dribble, rise up with that kind of length, get the shot off whenever he wants it, when he gets more comfortable in that area of the floor, then they're going to have that guy, and they know how to run their offense late. They didn't know what they wanted to do. And the Knicks clearly do, and it was a major advantage in this series because they were all decided in the last couple of minutes.
I think the Knicks are worthy champions this year. They deserve it, and they were inspiring to watch. I think the right team won. But your point about the Spurs is what I want to go to next, which is they do have a couple questions that now emerge. They had a great run. Coming out of the Western Conference Finals, it felt like, man, maybe this team has no flaws. The finals exposed, something that they're going to deal with now going forward. And I'll start with the De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper piece of this, which is Fox had an atrocious finals. It was really rough. And to your point, there is a sense of who is our guy at the end. I think it's supposed to be Fox. It's supposed to be him. He wasn't able to get it done. But more to the point, Dylan Harper is a wild horse, man. That guy needs to be able to give it room to roam because he is such a great player. And you look at this playoff run in this finals, and I see an issue, not just with this finals. Mitch Johnson said, we're going down with De'Aaron Fox. We're putting the ball in his hands. Well, it didn't work out. Going into next year, I think it's going to be very tricky for them to figure out how to let Harper grow into the player he needs to be while still getting value out of a player you just gave a supermax. So what do you make of Fox's finals, and what do you make of the Harper-Fox dynamic going forward?
Well, here's the thing. Obviously, you're right. He played really poorly, and he was involved in some of the plays that really determined games negatively for the Spurs. And we don't have to keep diving into that in the decision making at the end of Game 4 in particular. Here's the thing about De'Aaron Fox, though. People that just want to go cut him, trade him, get rid of him. That's just not the way this works. He's got a lot of money coming to him. He's still a very talented player. He was really bad in the series. It was a combination of got in his head. There's no question in my mind. I've never seen him miss this many good looks for him. This is a guy that was an elite scorer in this league before he got to San Antonio. He sacrificed some of like what was important numbers wise, shots wise, because he was on a team that had a chance to win a championship. He didn't need to do it every night, but you still saw it selectively throughout the season. He was not 100% healthy in the series, and then it got in his head. The combination of the two things led to what you watched. Okay, so let's start with that. But De'Aaron Fox is still a really good player. De'Aaron Fox could have a bounce back next year. Now, will he get to shake all of this? Not until he has a great postseason run and he comes through in the playoffs for them. Then this will go to back. I don't care what he does in a regular season next year. Yeah, all people are going to talk about is the postseason. It doesn't matter now for him. Doesn't matter. It only matters to come through, and not even a first round, second round, later. Conference finals, De'Aaron Fox has to be much better. That's how you make it go to bed. Will he do it? I don't know. It remains to be seen. But to think that all of a sudden now De'Aaron Fox is some bum that they got to get rid of, that's just not the way the league works, and it's not true about De'Aaron Fox either. It's not fair to him, and it's an extreme position to take. So start with that. The component of the Harper-Fox component, you probably heard me on the broadcast Saturday. And I heard people saying, man, I think Legler wants Harper to have the ball because I kept saying it. I didn't understand staying married to that idea that De'Aaron Fox had to be your initiator offensively with the way he had played to that point. Not only in the series, but in that game. 3 for 15 in the game and missing shots repeatedly that were good looks. The one, I think, for me, the most comfortable player in a Spurs uniform on Saturday was Dylan Harper.
It's no question.
No question. He was more comfortable than Wemby. He was more comfortable than these guys that have been there a while. Vassell, who's been in San Antonio for a long time. Keldon Johnson. De'Aaron Fox, longtime NBA vet, 25-point scorer in this league. None of those guys were as comfortable as Dylan Harper. So to me, if you want to criticize Mitch Johnson, That is the most valid criticism because it didn't make any sense. You have control on the sideline to determine, put the ball in his hands. I had faith that Dylan Harper is going to be able to get to the paint whenever he wants to. Now, he missed a couple of shots late in that game. I mean, yeah, he didn't finish a layup, but it wasn't because he was feeling something. He just missed a shot. Now, his shooting is a little bit limited. So, like, if you can play him differently and force him to a pull-up jumper or force him to a three, then, yeah, okay, that's probably a win for the defense right now until that becomes more consistent. But that's not what he's about. He's in the lane if you got one defender, and they're not going to send a second guy because they're worried about the Spurs three-point shooting. So he is going to be at the front of the rim. Now, what he does with it at that point, 50% from the field in the conference finals as a 20-year-old. He had a 20-point game in every round of the playoffs. He had a couple games where he didn't shoot well. For game 1 and game 5 in particular, he didn't shoot actually particularly well in game 3 either, but he got to the line and did some other things. He was the guy that should have had the ball in the key moments in game 5. Yeah. That, to me, is the most valid criticism for Mitch Johnson because some of these other things are limitations of his own players. I talked about Wemby. He still hasn't mastered the area of the floor I think he could dominate. De'Aaron Fox was struggling, didn't have it. Stephon Castle was really bad offensively in game 5. Dylan Harper was the obvious choice. Give him the ball. High ball screen or hell, ISO. He's going to be in the paint. And they didn't do it because I think Mitch Johnson just did not want to bail on De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, I think that's it.
I think it cost him a game.
I think so too. And now you just wonder, the Spurs have an identity crisis, in my opinion, going into next year. And this isn't a hot take. Almost every team has an identity crisis going into the year because you have to figure out what your identity is. That's what the season is for. So I'm not
certainly every team that doesn't win it. You're right. That's 29 of them.
You have to figure it out. Exactly. So I'm not trying to make a hot take here, but theirs is more interesting because I do think that Dylan Harper, to me, represents the guy that plays that role for them, not take every shot, but the ball, I think, is very likely to be in his hands. When we get back to this point of the season next year, I think Harper will be in position to be capable of being the guy that you trust to steer and steward those minutes for the Spurs, and I just want to see how that happens. And by the way, I could also see a bit of a Kobe-Shaq dynamic with Harper and Wemby in that Wemby is their best player. He's great at so many things. But at the end of games, Harper might have more dynamic creation than Wemby at this stage. Wemby still has to work on what his go-to moves are and how to carve out space in his spots and different things. Harper already has that ability. So I'm not saying they'll handle it the same way as Kobe and Shaq. But in that era, Shaq was the best player. Kobe, grew into the guy that maybe you wanted to close with. And I could see a dynamic with that with Harper and Wemby that they're going to have to navigate. And that's what makes it so interesting.
By the way, real quick, I want to correct something because I had two stat lines I pulled up at the same time on my screen. And I was talking about the shooting performances, and I misspoke because I was looking at a couple of De'Aaron Fox's games. Harper only had the one poor shooting game. He had the one game when he was 1 for 8 from 3, 5 for 18 from the field in game 3. Every other game in the series, he was over 50% from the field. That's a 20-year-old operating in that space, 10 for 19 in game 5. So to me, it was the critical question. Clearly, Dylan Harper is the future, and that future might be next year. De'Aaron Fox is still going to be there with you. Is De'Aaron Fox maybe more suited to that off-the-bench role, playing 25 minutes where he gets to play with the second unit, and he can take more control of that unit offensively? Harper, Castle is your future backcourt. Dylan Harper. Now, neither of those guys Castle shot over 40% from the 3 after the All-Star break. He's come a long way. It's obviously still not his number one strength. He wants to play 18 feet and in with his power and his patience, and he does those patient step-throughs and decels at the rim. That's his game. Harper is just a burst of explosive athletic ability at the rim, great finisher. Can shoot, but it's very streaky. So that's not your ideal shooting backcourt. But they're both so young, that improvement in that area is going to come. But here's the thing. You put them out there with Vassell and Champagnie, that's all the three-point shooting you need because Wemby can also shoot.
Right.
So to me, and Harper, by the way, is a top-shelf defender. So you're not sacrificing anything there. The time probably should be next year. Go with it. And I predicted it. I said he's going to be a first-team all-league player by year 5. Yeah, and I think he showed you in the postseason. And I said it's somebody right after the game, and they said maybe not even that long. But it's hard in this league because there's only a couple spots for guards on those teams, and it's hard to grab one of those. He's that talented, that good, that poised, and that ready. So we'll see what the future holds. But for me, I think I'm starting that next year.
Yeah, I agree. I'm 100% with you. Gen Z, Kobe, and Shaq, I mean, is what you got there with Harper and Wemby. Let's wrap up by talking, or this segment by talking about Wemby, though, because he had such an interesting finals following a dominant playoff run. You know, the narrative around him, I think, has evolved. Not that we were so concerned with narratives, but he did struggle at key parts of this, closing out on Karl Anthony Towns and being able to contain in space. We saw finally a weakness in his defensive armor. And then offensively, I think this series really exposed how limited he is at self-creation late games, as you just alluded to, and that's a big thing he's going to have to overcome. And the last piece of this is, you know, the rise, everybody's going to praise you for all these character things. They're going to exaggerate parts of your character and say they're great. And then when on the fall, after you lose, everybody's going to exaggerate the infractions that you have. Wemby got a lot of flagrants and uncalled flagrants and technicals throughout this run. Do you feel, I'll start with the first question. Do you feel like he lost his temper a little bit in this one and maybe was, you know, had some dirty play, or do you think that's overstated?
I wouldn't call him a dirty player. I wouldn't say he had dirty plays. I would say he was almost overly exuberant and I think didn't harness in his energy and aggressiveness at times that got him in some silly situations and put him in some controversial plays. But I don't think, for instance, was it intentional, that closeout on Brunson in the last game that ended up not being called because nothing was called in the moment. They couldn't even go back and review it in time. That was going to be an interesting situation though, man. If they won that game and they got to a review the next day and they could somehow after the fact upgrade that to a flagrant, you now have a suspension on your hands, and man, would that have been a talking point. We didn't get there, and I think, you know,
thank God,
that would have been interesting. Yeah, that would have been so interesting to see how that was going to play out. But that, you know, the elbow obviously was intentional to Nas Reed in the previous round. Like that was clearly, or 2 rounds ago, that was clearly intentional. So he was wrapped up in that. There were a number of plays in this series where he found himself in the midst of some physical contact that was taking place. I don't think he was dirty. I think that he didn't really know necessarily how to harness and express that energy and exuberance and trying to be physical. Like for a guy that thin and long, trying to be physical, sometimes it doesn't look right. And it's gangly and he's getting in the way and his arms are flailing around because he wants to insert himself physically. I'm not going to call him a dirty player, and he's very young. He'll learn from all of this. I think I said something on one of our shows. I don't know when it was. I don't remember. It was definitely the playoffs. That the difference between him right now, like, and where he needs to get to, and maybe he'll never get there, for a 7'4" player to just be able to go get yours whenever you want, it's just not going to ever be the same as a Jalen Brunson, as a Shea, as a Luka, you know, Jokic, who can do a little bit more off the dribble, control you with his weight and his size and his touch, you know, a Jason Tatum, go up and Anthony Edwards. They can go with the live dribble and get whatever shot they want most of the time. Even if it's not a good shot, they can get a shot. And with Wemby, it's just going to be harder because he's longer. His dribble's higher. There's guys pressed up under him, like they're up into his torso area before he's even dribbled. It's just going to be harder. And I think you saw some of that in this series. And that's why I said, you've got to master an area of the floor where your jab step is all you're going to need. That's not 28 feet. And he's not going to be a dominant back to the basket post player. So what's left? It's that area, man, 15 to 20. Elbows, top of the key. That slot area just inside the three-point line where he can catch, give him one strong side shooter, and he should be able to get efficient enough with his jab step where he can go by a guy, one dribble, he's at the rim with his length. He can get into a quick step back off one dribble, or he can jab back a guy up and rise up over the top and focus on the fact that I don't care how close the guy is to him, he's not contested because of his release point. That is the next step for him, and he will have, just like Dirk Nowitzki had, a go-to area. And now he is a dominant player that can get what he wants simply and efficiently without having to be a guy that can create that much off the dribble, because he's never going to be able to do that at his size. He just isn't. So that, to me, is the next thing, and I think that was something missing from this series. He didn't operate there. Even on short rolls out, and when he screens and dives, he doesn't stop at the top of the key with that pocket that's open, catch and shoot. He did it a couple of times, and he made the shot. He always wants to run straight to the rim and put pressure because of his length. That's great. Those 2 or 3 times a game, he gets the lob. Great. What about the other 35 possessions that they need you to catch the ball in the air? You can be efficient. That, to me, is the number one thing he should be working on this summer. Dominate the mid-range area of the floor by on the catch, going into a jab step routine that's efficient, 1 dribble, 2 dribbles at max to get into your jump shot or get to the rim. That's what was missing from their offense.
I agree. And it's so interesting now to see what he puts in, what he does this offseason. A short offseason too, by the way. This is the curse of going deep into the playoffs is you kind of lose, the teams that didn't make the playoffs had 2 extra months, 2.5 months head start on your offseason. So I want to see what Wemby does this offseason. He seems like a worker, smart guy, and is confronted now with his shortcomings. And it'll be interesting to see at 22 years old how much
long term, this is the best thing that could happen to this group. It just to get there, you're out of the postseason to NBA champions in 1 year with your best 3 players 22 and under.
Yep.
Like this sets you up to me to really address each of those guys at the top, what they need to work on and add to their game going into next season because of the disappointment that they're feeling right now. That will drive them over the summer a lot further than a summer in which they're champions trying to repeat. The fact that they're not there yet, there's more to go get. They've got to address, look in the mirror, and be honest about their shortcomings, address those shortcomings, come back even hungrier next year.
We'll see what happens with them. I mean, it feels inevitable that they will be great and get over the hump at some point, but there's a lot of teams that could have said that never did, and we'll have to wait and see which way they break. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, though, I want to talk about the all-playoff team, our favorite series, and maybe the players who disappointed the most, and now their future is in question. We'll talk about all that on the other side. And World Soccer is here. You guys watching the World Cup, man, it's so much fun. I'm loving this World Cup coverage, by the way, of all the people visiting the U.S. and just finding all the intrigue about the little things like Walmart and stuff. I find it so funny. But the soccer's here. Every goal changes everything. Right now on FanDuel, it's giving you a reason to root for every single one. Introducing Every Goal Pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. That's right. More goals means more bonus bets, and all you have to do is turn on your token. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/AllCity to get started now.
Must be 21 or older and present in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.
That moment, the one where you realize you left your favorite sunglasses at the beach, on the roof of your car, or at a gas station 3 states away. Well, I've been there too, but I've got Shady Rays, and they've changed the game. They're sunglasses that are made for real life. They're good-looking, polarized, durable, and not stupidly expensive. The wild part is, if you lose or break them even on day one, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. So now you can actually wear your sunglasses without fear on hikes, at concerts, on a boat, wherever. Shady Rays is eyewear that has your back. Go to shadyrays.com and use the code ALLCITY for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. All right, back here, segment 2 of the All-NBA show, me and Tim Legler. Let's talk about the best series. Let's open up by saying the best series. You were calling a lot of these. I have my list. You can just kind of play off of mine. I think the finals was the best series, even though it was only 5 games. We had a lot of 7-game series, but all 5 games were phenomenal. The theater of the games was incredible. And that game 4 to me was probably the best game of the playoffs and most memorable moment. So to me, the finals was the best one, which is fantastic. Do you agree?
Completely. And I think, you would never think that if you didn't watch the games and you just looked at the results and you try to pick one of these out. You'd go, oh, it had to be OKC San Antonio. And that's probably the runner-up. And it's because you went to a 7th game, the Spurs having to win on the road. A lot of drama in that series. But no, I think the finals, 5 consecutive nail-biters. And at the production meeting, we the morning of game 5, we have a production meeting, and then Mike Breen and myself and Richard Jefferson kind of get to give our thoughts on the series to that point, what we expect maybe that night and everything else. And I said at that meeting that this was the most precarious 3-1 lead any team has ever had in the NBA playoffs because of the way the end of these games have played out. I mean, and you saw this, the data, Spurs led for 70% of the minutes in the series. So, that's why it was precarious. They couldn't figure out the end of the game. So for me, 5 straight games where you're sitting there in the last 2 minutes and you don't know who is going to win this game. You look at all these other series. I mean, we had some good ones early. There were a lot of sweeps, 4-1s, 4-2s.
Yeah, it was extremes.
We even had some blowouts in game 7s.
Yeah.
So it was just some extreme stuff that went on. Certainly anybody that ran into the Knicks in the Eastern Conference, it was like being put into a wood chipper, what they were doing to you, man. So this for me was it. It was the finals. And, I guess, you think, wow, how close was this to being 3-2 the other way heading into game 6 on Tuesday?
Would have made it perfect, to be honest. That's the only thing that would have made this series better is if it ended in 6 in New York. One extra game, but what can you do?
And so, I mean, look, I think from a broadcasting or television standpoint in general, it's just like there's more there when the home team closes out a series. It's just more, right, to visually and just to capture and the electricity of the crowd and all that.
Especially in New York.
But I know this was it. This was it. And it's historically going to be 4-1. That's the math. It certainly didn't feel like a 4-1 series. It just was a Knicks team that navigated the moments that you had to have in every game better than the Spurs. That's really what it came down to.
Well, that's why number 2 for me was San Antonio versus OKC. But to your point, that was a 7-game series with 2 great games, 2 really close games. This series was 5 games with 5 great games, 5 close games. So you got more close games. But the back and forth between San Antonio and Oklahoma City was just fantastic. That's why I think, and the stakes felt so high for both teams. So I think that one was great. Number 3 for me was Cavs Raptors. You remember this series, in the first round, but it was a great series and we got some really good performances. So I think that one for me, a 7-game series, was number 3. I went with Knicks Hawks number 4. CJ McCollum with 2-game winners. Obviously huge. And then you have the Knicks coming together in games 5 and 6 and becoming what they were was fantastic. And then I had Pistons Magic 7-game series. It was a good series, but it was a slog. If you recall, it was a very grindy, gritty series. That was my top 5. Is there any that I left out, and are any of those that you would have maybe had higher?
One I really did like was Pistons Magic.
Yeah, that was my 5th, yeah.
In a first round, and I think because you had a 60-win number 1 seed down 3-1.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of drama toward the end of that, but even like the last game wasn't competitive.
No.
I looked at the Pistons Cavs as like, and for me that had some moments in it, but then the last game's a 31-point game. The Atlanta New York game series was interesting. I thought about that one, but then I compared it to Pompeii, the city of Pompeii. Okay. And here's why. Here's why. Because it was this amazing, thriving city, right? And that's like this series was.
Yeah.
And then game 6 happened. And then game 6 happens. And then it was just completely covered and forgotten about for all time until it was dug out years later. Why we called that game? It was what a series, and then it was a 61-point lead in game 6. So like everything that happened up to that point of story was washed away by hilarious. That. So that's to me is how I view it, man. But so honestly, I look at it I knew we were going to talk about this. I went back and you pull up the playoff bracket. And you're just because some of this stuff, like you got to recall, it was 2 months ago.
Yeah,
you got to recall all these series, and I'm like, man, there were a lot of like one-sided games and one-sided series, and so I don't think the pickings were great in terms of answering this question. So that's why it was almost like to me obvious that it had to be the finals, followed by OKC San Antonio, and then everything else to me paled in comparison after those two.
Yeah, nobody's doing it like you, Legs. That metaphor was incredible, man. Absolutely top tier stuff. We got to hire you to write the books on the season, man. Let's go to the all playoff team. I think Brunson and Wemby are the easiest locks on this. If you think about the playoff run, you're going to think about what Brunson did, and you're going to think about what Wemby did. In fact, I think that's how we'll remember the 2026 playoffs, not just because they met in the finals, but both of those guys were the story of their respective conferences.
They were, without question, and they've gotten all the attention and love that they deserve, and will continue to. So let's, rather than spend a lot of time on both of those guys, the next guy for me that I think is going to be right there, the next name mentioned is going to be OG Anunoby.
Ooh.
I think his playoff run was that good, and he had the iconic play of the postseason. And you think what happens, how different things are going to – we're not even having this conversation today. Think about it, just based on math, if that doesn't happen at the end of that game. It's because no matter what happened on Saturday, it's going to be a 3-2 series. And we're still playing on Tuesday. We're not talking about the series being over yet. If it wasn't for what he did at the end of that game, and just and actually it was an earlier part of the game that is not going to ever be talked about. They're down 29 points in the 20s. They would have been down 35, 40 points if he wasn't making shots during that stretch.
Threes,
And I'm not even saying 29 is within arm's length, because that's ridiculous to say that within 9 minutes to go in the third quarter. But you know what I mean. They're at a number that's just mathematically impossible to come back from if he wasn't making shots earlier and then had the heroics late. And his defense, which is always there every night, but just the consistency and efficiency with which he shot the basketball, the number of plays he made, I think is going to be the next name that's going to come up when you're talking about the 2026 postseason. 10 years from now.
Yeah. All right. Who else? I think OG is 100%. And by the way, what I'll say about OG is he goes into the top tier of role players, because I don't know if he's quite a star, but he goes in with Andre Iguodala and these players who are great players who filled the gaps at the top level. That's what you aspire to be if you're a third option on a team or below. That's what the performance you aspire for. All right. Who else?
Next guy I want to talk about is Dylan Harper. And I mean, how can you go away from it? Because here's the other thing about him. He got better as the playoffs went on.
Yes.
Some guys, they're young rookies, and maybe they make that splash early. But then as the stakes get raised deeper, they struggle. Maybe the pressure, maybe their minutes get cut a little bit. The opportunities aren't there, and they don't finish on that note. He got better the more the pressure intensified. Yeah. Very unusual for a first-year guard to be able to have that kind of impact. So I think Dylan Harper is the next guy that I'm looking at and saying people are going to remember what this guy did, particularly because I think it's setting the stage for what he's about to do next season.
He's a star now. I mean, he leveled up more than any other player in terms of, he's a name, a household name now for NBA fans. Who else?
I guess, you'd have to still go with Shea, obviously, is going to be in there, even though he struggled in the Oklahoma City series.
I don't know. He's not on my list.
He's not on your list because of that?
Yeah, I mean, he's already a great player, so I'm rating players based on their expectations. So, yes, he was very good, but I thought he was below himself in the series that mattered.
I thought Stephon Castle until, the end also would be a guy. Yeah. I just thought, man, his toughness and strength, particularly, the game he had in game 3, they lose those 2 games at home to the Knicks, and he goes in and has that type of game that he had in Madison Square Garden in game 3 with that environment, with that atmosphere. And they're just poised to thinking, they're thinking that fan base, they're thinking, we're not even going back to San Antonio. We just did 1-2 there. And he came in game 3 and was absolutely incredible. The strongest player on the court in that game. So I think Stephon Castle is another guy that I think overall improved the way that he's viewed in his general national profile.
I think that's right as well. I'll give you a couple for me. I think among the star players, Cade Cunningham to me really impressed. And I know he was, his hands were tied in many ways by the lack of shooting that they had. And yet he still, I thought, just did a phenomenal job. We didn't have any doubts about what kind of player he is. But I actually thought, despite Detroit being a 1 seed and losing in the second round, I still walked away thinking that's the right guy to build a contender around. And when they figure out their roster, he's just going to be a playoff riser. And then Scotty Barnes. I thought Scotty Barnes in that first round was phenomenal in a way that, again, it was 2 months ago, so we kind of forget. But I think Scotty Barnes looked to me like a guy that I understand why Toronto should be optimistic. They still need, I think, to figure out what direction going forward. But I think Scotty Barnes played really well in really tough assignments.
It's a good one. Yeah.
And then if we go to role players, Caruso, we kind of forget how many big shots that guy had. I mean, it's the defense we know about, but he had several games where his shot making was the differentiator. So I think he deserves a mention as well. And then CJ McCollum, short run, but you talk about a veteran guy getting 2-game winners in a playoff run in one round. It's impressive. And CJ McCollum was a star for about 2 weeks there at the beginning of this playoffs.
The New York Knicks lost
twice,
three games by a total of 6 points.
That's so crazy.
Two game winners from McCollum away from 3 consecutive sweeps going into the finals.
Yeah.
And they lose 1 game in game 3 at home, the one I just mentioned, by 4 points. That's how dominant. They're what was I saw it today. I can't remember the exact number. It was plus 250 something was the plus minus for them. It's an NBA record for the postseason.
Yeah.
So those are all great names. And now, this is interesting now because I don't think going into the season, while I mentioned it, there was a path for the Knicks. People weren't looking at the Knicks and saying that's a championship team. That clearly, now that's how they're going to be regarded going into next season.
Yeah.
Because we've seen them at their best handle that stage and how incredible they were for that stretch. I mean, they were playing damn near perfect basketball. Yeah. And so now going in, they are regarded as a championship team, on that level, not just because they won a championship, because that's how they looked when they played. That is a championship caliber team, the way that team plays on both ends of the floor. And this perfect rhythm they found amongst their starters. So now it's going to be interesting to see how differently they're kind of viewed going into next season, man. It's not just hey, if everything breaks right. And even then going into the playoffs, it was you felt like all the top 4 could beat each other. Detroit, Cleveland, the Knicks, Boston, it felt like all of those teams could win a 7-game series against each other. Next year, it's going to feel different. I think people are going to, I think the odds came out. They're listed at 4th, I believe.
Yeah.
Best odds, which Oklahoma City and San Antonio were going to be the top 2. That's how they were regarded all year. Wasn't going to change. And so I didn't even see it. Was the 3rd team Boston, I'm assuming?
Let me see if I can pull this up here.
Somebody sent it to me a text message, but they didn't list the teams. They just said
Boston. Yeah, Boston. Which makes you wonder if the offseason holds for them, because that's more of an offseason prediction, I feel, than anything.
Could be. I think that they're thinking, there could be a major change personnel-wise coming to Boston. So, but now that the Knicks are regarded differently, man. And not just, like I said, because they won it. It's because of how they won it, how dominant they were.
I think the Knicks are the coolest team of this year too, which is, they're just a cool team, man. They're tough. They know how to win. All right, 2 quick super chats here for you, Legs. Let's see what the people have to say. Psycho Blue, he says, who would have thought Victor Wembanyama was just a long-winded way of saying Matt Ryan? You got to love this cross-sport hate, man. B-Ball Cthulhu now eagerly awaits offseason chaos now that Dolan, of all people, is the owner to copy for a chip. See you next season. It's true, we didn't even talk about the Dolan redemption arc, but here he is. Led the Knicks back to the promised land.
I just think it's amazing how people have to now go back and rewrite their storylines, man, their narratives from the way that they got crushed for everything that they did, every decision they made, starting with the Brunson signing and everything else, going into what they gave up to get Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, all that stuff. And just it looks like they had a pretty clear vision of what they wanted this team to look like, man.
True.
But they didn't even know that Jalen Brunson was this.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this really possible. But, man, do the pieces fit? God, do the pieces fit? Yeah. Even picking up a guy like Alvarado this year had a major impact on this team the postseason. Landry Shamet, when Mike Brown took the job, said he didn't know how it was going to play out with the end of his roster, but he said one new thing he knew, he wanted Landry Shamet on the team. He told them that, the front office, that from day one. I want Landry Shamet here. Look at the impact that Landry Shamet had on this team. So, everything they pressed, man, every button worked, and the hiring of Mike Brown. I mean,
he was the right guy, man. He was the absolute right guy.
And now you just sit back and let them revel in it, enjoy this offseason, and now they come into next year, and you're viewing them completely differently at the start of the season.
Yeah. All right, what's the next one? I guess we got 2 more here coming in. Matt Herndey says 26 Knicks equals 22 Warriors. Small clutch guard, Steph and Brunson. Underwhelming Minnesota #1 picks turning up. Wiggs versus Cat. Defensive anchor, power forward Dre OG. Offensive rebounding big man, Loon and Mitchell Robinson. Hometown kid, Jose and JTA. Journeyman, Sham and OPJ. Sure, that was a lot of things I guess you could compare here too. I wouldn't think of those 2 teams as the same, but creative super chat nonetheless.
No, that was cool. I like that. I like putting some thought into those super chats. That's pretty good. Like breaking it down that way. I think the one difference is just this, stylistically, the system the Warriors were in. It's kind of what you marveled about. This was a little bit different, the way that this team operated, built around this one player that's going to control the ball that much and just have an answer for anything you put in front of him. So that's fun, man. I like that.
To me, it's more about the 22 Warriors, 23 Nuggets, 24 Celtics. This team, it's just, they're all different, man. And that's what's cool about the Thunder. Obviously, they're all different. And that's why I love what's going on with the NBA right now. What else we got? Last one, Mizuk Pan says, really appreciate both of you for running this show all season. Can't wait for next season. We appreciate that you appreciate it, man. We love talking hoops. All we do is talk hoops on this show.
That's all we do, man. Starting in the preseason, building up through that first week. We love getting finally into real games, and we stayed with you the entire season. And we're proud of what this is, what this show is, what this conversation is. And we got more coming, man, because we got right around the corner the draft, free agency, summer league, all that stuff.
What are you doing with the draft this year with ESPN?
I'm actually going to be on the draft, the main draft show on ESPN. I think we have one on ESPN, one on ABC at the same time. So I'll be on the desk. To my knowledge, I believe I'm on there with Jay Billis and Malika Andrews, and we'll have Bobby Marks and Shams Charania. And obviously probably coming at it more from the NBA team's perspective that are making the selections, more so than like the player breakdown. But I'll obviously have to be up on that too. So that, listen, I've been so deep on the finals, finishing the season, that now I've got a week to really get myself up to speed and prepare for that. But I'm looking forward to it. I haven't worked the draft in a long, long time, so I'm looking forward to being out there on next Tuesday.
Well, congrats on a successful season on the broadcast. Back to work, Legs. Back to work. Get back in there and study.
Yeah, much to my son's chagrin. When I told him I had to go to work this morning and do a few more things, he couldn't believe it because he's like, "You're home? Let's go." Yeah. I'm on his clock now for the next week, certainly before I go up to the draft.
Well, go enjoy that, man. We appreciate it. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Hope you guys have enjoyed this one, and we're back on Wednesday. We will be talking about the draft, the offseason, and most interesting teams. Hit the like button for us on the way out. See you next time.
We all silly like the mayor.